everybody, and welcome to the April 30th Trips and Traps. Andy Serling, Richard Migliore.
Well, I like our backdrop a little better than, I mean, the studio at Aqueduct's nice, but it's a little nicer to be outside at beautiful Belmont Park.
I agree. Now, we're at Belmont Park, but we were racing at Aqueduct last week, so it's the last Trips and Traps where we'll feature races from Aqueduct, but we do have a couple of turf races as well as a couple of dirt races to show you, and we're going to start out with a race that featured a very big performance by the winner, Mrs. McDougal, and a horse who got herself in some trouble, Graceful Grit, a European for Christophe Clement, who broke very sharply.
Yeah, unusually sharp for a horse making the first start in this country. Generally, they tend to break a little slow. She actually broke really aggressively and was keen, and you could see Luis Saez's thought process into the first turn. I've got to get her in behind horses and covered up so she doesn't pull so hard, much like they do in Europe.
Yeah, I thought that Luis Saez, and he's been riding extraordinarily well since coming from Florida. I think this is a situation where the race and the horse made him look bad. I think he was doing a lot of the right things. They just blew up in his face.
Yeah, and I think that's the right way to put it. They blew up in his face. I know some people, and we're going to look at the head-on after we watch the pan shot, they're going to question, why did he come off the rail? But he was trying to keep cover, and the four-horse, the eventual winner, was off the rail enough where if he had left his filly on the rail, I think she'd have run off with him down the backstretch.
And I think that's exactly what he was worried about. And you see the horse inside of him, Chrysolite, who ends up finishing second. That horse gets through on the inside. And that horse had been looking for room before, but he was trying to give himself options. And when we look at the head-on, as Richie said, you're going to see that Mrs. McDougal is drifting, and he kind of knew that she was the horse to beat, and he didn't want to attack her too soon.
No, and then once he gave up that rail position, and Chrysolite, the eventual runner-up, gets inside of him, it takes any wiggle room he has away, and now you're going to see he gets shuffled back out of it here. And then she got difficult to handle because it looked like she wanted to lug in.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, and you're going to see her start acting badly after this. But it just feels like it may have been somewhat of a reaction to all the things that happened. You see him steadying in there. He's still trying to find position. He'd like to wheel her to the outside. She's having none of that, Richie.
No, she was not going to come out at that point. And it's interesting because she wasn't lugging in early in the race, and I wonder if when she got shuffled out, it didn't kind of throw her off mentally as well as physically where she got to lugging in.
Do you also think that at the point when she started lugging in there before the break, I got to think Luis Saez is a little bit worried that she's going to do something goofy when they head to the break, and maybe at that point he figured she's not going to win. She's not going to get a piece of this, and here she is behind horses. We'll talk about that. I think he grabbed a hold of her then to make sure that something worse didn't happen.
Well, it is a very unsettling feeling when you've got a horse lugging in a little bit out of control, and you're getting to that point where the rail breaks away, and now you've got that gap and all that empty space. And what do I say? Horses run to empty space. But here, talk about this here when this filly got inside him.
Well, you know, this is the thing. He's trying to stay behind Mrs. McDougal. He's trying to do the right thing. I just think it blew up in his face, and at that point, she got rank.
Yeah, she got rank. And then I think sometimes when you put the bit in a horse's mouth, they'll tend to want to go left or right. That's when horses lug more. That's why when you talk about a rider being soft on a horse's mouth, but he got in a position where he had to grab her. And you could see, look at her head carriage here. He's just struggling to keep her straight. And, of course, you are worried about it. Here comes that break right there. You don't want her making a left-hand turn into that gap and crashing with you.
And he took the stick out. He's not taking the stick out at that point because he's trying to drive her the wire. He took the stick out at that point because he was afraid that she would lug in. And I honestly think he did a very good job not allowing this situation to not get worse. I would not give up on this horse. I still think this horse can run. I just think circumstance worked against her.
I think circumstance worked against her. I think the course worked against her at Aqueduct. I think she'll be better here at Belmont, where she maybe get a one-turn mile or even 7 furlongs, get a little more pace in front of her. He doesn't have to get in her mouth. And I can say from experience, going through that gap there, he did a good job keeping her straight.
No, he did. I think he did a very, very good job. And once again, sometimes horses make riders look very good. Sometimes they make riders look bad.
Absolutely.
Now, here's a horse that did not do its rider any favor, but I think this first-time starter, Esther the Queen, we're going to talk about in the second race on April 25th at Aqueduct, she takes herself out of the race at the start, and as you're going to see as we roll it, it takes a long, long time for her to get back into the race, but when she does, she makes a dramatic, brief, wide run that, to me, and I think you agree, indicates some ability.
Oh, no, she definitely has ability. She put a run into the race, and you could see she broke awkwardly, kind of not really knowing what to do. Then she kind of ducked in a little bit. Then as soon as the horses came together and she started getting kicked back, she's head straight in the air. You could see Joel Rosario trying to motivate her to go forward, and it's probably not until she got far enough out of the kickback that she dropped her head and get in her stride.
And that's probably a very good example of a horse, a firster, not being used to the kickback, freaking out when she sees it, and when she comes back for her next second start, she's not going to be as surprised if she's in a situation where she encounters kickback.
Well, and that's exactly the right thing. She's not going to she's going to understand what is coming. Some horses never really react to it well. It looks to me like she's settled enough, even though he tips her out in the clear, where I think she got a lot of education in this first start.
I really think she did too, and it's once again, we're looking for small things from first-time starters. So, bad break, as you point out, all the troubles and difficulties she had early in the race, but yet she put in a relatively significant run for a good quarter mile this race wide before understandably tiring a bit at the end. It wasn't a bad field either. I thought she ran okay.
I thought she ran really well, and I think she'll improve just being cued in to racing and having that experience. And she ran down to the 16th ball before she wound up flattening out, so I thought it was a really good effort.
I agree. She only lost this race by a little over 8 lengths, and we're not going to quantify the trouble. It's just a learning experience for these horses, and this is the kind of second starter that will run a lot better the next time they run. Now, speaking of first-time starters and horse with experience, there was a maiden race on April 25th. This was the 5th race. 2 first-time starters that had very different trips, and a horse with experience, the 6 RAFFIES Bay, that got in a lot of trouble in here. Now, one of them is Long Island Express, who goes off the lead. The other is a firster for Chad Brown, Act Feisty, that ends up a little bit wide. The other one is the one with experience in those magenta silks, and that's the 6-horse RAFFIES Bay, who is in trouble early, settles in the back of the pack, and gets in a lot of traffic in the stretch.
Yeah, but I think because of the trouble at the start, it kind of dealt the hand that Junior Alvarado had to play. And when I would get left or already be at a disadvantage, I would say, well, I've got to save every inch of ground because I've given up too much already.
I completely agree. I think Junior did everything right with this horse. He realized, as you said, I've got to save ground. I can't sweep around the field at any point. And he got her comfortable early in the race. I thought Act Feisty never got to get comfortable because, as you'll see, and we go into the turn, she's on the outside, she's wide. There's Junior in the back. Now, Long Island Express we haven't talked about the front end. And with Long Island Express this firster, horse was keen, and this was a turf course with a lot of give in it. So this was a fast pace when you consider the final time. You had a 150-to-1 shot on her making the move now wide. You had the 10-horse in this race, Dr. Keogh, who was 16-to-1, fighting as well. This horse took punches for a long, long way and didn't give up till right at the end.
No, and a first-time starter making their first start a mile and a 16th, it's a little bit difficult. I used to hate that. If I've just got comfortable on the lead, getting my horse to settle, and I look over and there's some horse that's 100-to-1 or 50-to-1 chewing on me, it just made you so frustrated. But I thought Kendrick Carmouche did a really good job of keeping this horse as settled as possible. And he just got a little bit tired late. You'd have to think he's going to improve a great deal off of that first effort.
I agree. And I'm not sure. They're not always speed horses. Sometimes the first time out, they go the lead, and it's good experience for them. And then they're able to settle a little bit more. I'm not saying he's not a speed horse, and somebody's having speed a lot of times is very good. But this horse took a lot of punches and was still fighting it out. Act Feisty's made a decent run wide and never really had a chance not to get a breather. You see the front end. The horse we want to pick up now, though, is the eventual fourth finisher, RAFFIES Bay, Junior saving ground. He never gets a free, unencumbered path to run in, and this horse had run.
No, and he's searching. He's desperate, looking who's live enough to follow. Who can I get in behind that's going to be my fullback and blow the hole open for me? Well, everybody stayed pretty, packed up. There was a lot of congestion. Got to run in a little bit here, but still not really comfortable and free. This is a horse, obviously, that was prepared to run well off the layoff, and you just hope that he's got that effort back in him the next time.
Yeah, I agree. That's the thing. This might have been the day for him, and I think about what you like to say. He was running with the emergency brake on throughout a lot of that stretch because he could just never air him out. He couldn't get out in the clear. He's interesting, but honestly, Act Feisty did a bit of a wide trip, but Chad Brown's firsters are usually ready to run. I wonder how much you can expect him to improve, though he didn't run badly. I prefer Long Island Express to the firsters.
I agree with you. I think running the race he ran, kind of doing the dirty work, getting shots taken at him, he should improve from a fitness standpoint, and he was already pretty professional mentally.
Yeah, no, I think he may turn out to be okay. I think they're very different trips and something to think about. Your opinions may be different, but that's what this game is all about. Now, we'll turn our attention to a stake race run on closing day, the Bell Harbor, and we're going to talk about a horse, Perchance, who did come out of this race with an injury, so we'll see when and if she's able to come back. But I still think it presents an interesting discussion because I thought that Erod Ortiz had one job from the start, and that's to be aggressive and to force there to be some separation so he could get outside of the speed, the 3. I thought he was unaggressive, and because of that, he ends up getting into trouble.
Yeah, and he had a difficult trip after that. Now, I think you and I disagree. I think he did try to go. I think he came out, slapped her on the shoulder, tried to go forward. He wasn't as aggressive as I would have been.
Right.
I mean, I would have been.
He needs to be sending. He needs to think sometimes. His inclination is to rate. I think he asked her once, and he went,
Yeah.
Man, sometimes you got to put him in the race.
You know, talking with Kieran McLaughlin and Artie Magnuson, his assistant, they said Irad came out and said, you know, from the rail, everybody's going to be watching me. I've got to come out running, otherwise I'm going to get in trouble. And then he wound up getting that trip.
Yeah, I just think you've got to feel a sense of urgency. And as much as I love Erod as a rider, he's got a huge future ahead of him. I think he needs to add that 4th pitch to his arsenal. And that 4th pitch is being more aggressive, because it's getting to the point where a lot of people know, I don't have to worry about Erod. He's on the other speed. He ain't going.
Well, that's a very good point you make. And as you can see, she's searching for room here. Now she's going to kind of get stifled a little
Drifting,
bit.
coming over.
Yeah, and now she's going to have to angle out again, and very well could have been disqualified if she wasn't just a little bit clear of Paula's silver lining there. But those abrupt movements don't lend itself to a horse gaining momentum and going forward. And now you can see how much more comfortable she got in the clear. I think it's a very good point you make. When riders know another rider's habits, and they go, well, if I come out aggressive and lean on him, he'll take back. It just makes it easier for them to take your game away.
And you become a victim all the time. And you can't become a victim. And I think once Erod realizes, I got to fool these guys sometimes, I'm going to come out sending, he's going to find out it works for him. And also, it means the other guys aren't going to be relying him on to do certain things he keeps doing. This is a horse that should have won. A lot of it was unlucky. She drew a bad post in a bad position. But I think when that happens, the best riders have to find a way to extract themselves from it.
Well, you make such great points about it. You have to have a certain amount of unpredictability to your game. You can't let guys know. These guys are too sharp. They know horses' habits. They know riders' habits. If they know you're a 1-trick or maybe a 2 or 3-trick pony, like you're saying, though, you lack that one last thing in your arsenal, they're going to exploit it.
And they will, and they'll keep exploiting it, but once Erod changes that, and he will, he's too good a rider not to let that happen. Once when he does that, he's going to move to the very, very top, and he's pretty close to being there already.
Yeah, well, he's just about breaking through that bubble as it is.
Absolutely. Well, that does it for the Aqueduct races this year in Trips and Traps, but we're going to have a lot more turf racing, a lot more going on here at Belmont Park. We can always use your help. It's Trips and Traps at NYRANK.com.